What's going on, Bengals fans? Chris Daughtry back with you guys here on Bengals Breakdown. And considering the front office doesn't want to do anything at the NFL trade deadline, we're going to look way off into the future and look at some top Bengals 2026 NFL draft targets. Before we get into some of these names, though, I want to hear from you guys down inside the comments section. Where will the Bengals pick in the first round this year? Let me know what you guys think. Put your predictions in down inside the comment section. All right, so right now, the current 2026 NFL draft order. Saints currently are at number 1, Titans at number 2, Jets at number 3, Dolphins at number 4, the New York Giants at number 5, and you can see all the way down to that number 8 spot is the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I do also want to make note the Raiders do play tonight, so some things could change, and they're definitely going to change as the season progresses here. But as we sit right now on the bye week, the Bengals would be sitting at that number 8 pick. And they are going to have some holes that they're going to have to fill this year in free agency. You got a lot of players that are ending their contracts after this season. Now, obviously, some of these guys are going to be re-signed, but as it sits right now on the offensive side of the ball, you have 10 guys whose contracts are going to be done. Joe Flacco obviously was just a one-year deal there, but Jake Browning, he's your current QB2 technically right now, so we'll see if the Bengals end up, re-signing him to any kind of extension there, or do they pick somebody, later in the draft to be Joe Burrow's backup. Couple of tight ends as well. Noah Fant, Tanner Hudson, Cam Grandy, all three of those guys' contracts going to be expiring. Mitchell Tinsley, and then, your offensive line right now, Cordell Volson, Lucas Patrick, Dalton Reisner, all three of those guys, their contracts are going to be expiring here. And I do also want to make note, too, Orlando Brown Jr. is good through the 2026 season, but, considering his play right now, there might be a good chance that the Bengals might end up cutting Orlando Brown after the season. Over to the defensive side of the ball, you also got 10 more guys over there as well. Trey Hendrickson, we'll see what happens there. He does not have a no-tag clause in his, redone contract there. Bengals ended up giving him a raise earlier in the season. So technically the Bengals could end up tagging Trey Hendrickson, but, I just really don't know what's going to happen on that front there. Joseph Osai, Cam Sample, also going to be free agents. Marco Wilson, Cam Taylor-Britt on the last year of his deal. Geno Stone, I would expect with the age there, he's probably not going to be back next year. Tyson Anderson, PJ Jules, so there's some question marks at that safety spot as well. And then Shaka Hayward and Joe Giles Harris, both of those guys, mainly special teamers, but still at that linebacker spot. I don't necessarily think that the Bengals are going to go out and try to draft another linebacker, considering right now, you have the two rookies that are starting at that linebacker spot. But those guys being special teamers, you never really know what kind of direction they end up going there, which brings us now to the Bengals' top needs. This is what I think they are anyways. Safety, edge, I think defensive tackle, whether or not McKinley Jackson, what's going to happen with him after the season? Is he going to get cut? Could he be traded before next season? Cornerback, you're good on one side of the ball with DJ Turner. I think Dax Hill's played pretty good so far this year as well. But, CTB being a free agent still hasn't signed that, contract extension. He's had some ups and downs here with the Bengals. So we'll see what happens there. Offensive line, obviously a need, whether it's the guard, tackle, or even center spot even there too. So, you do have Matt Lee. He's currently on injured reserve right now, and Ted Karras is also going to be good through that 2026 season. But still, planning for your future is going to be a big thing, and still there with the tight ends as well. We'll talk about all these different types of position groups here in just a little bit. But right now, the Bengals 2026 draft picks. You have your first, second, third, fourth round picks. You do not have your fifth round pick because you gave that up in that Joe Flacco trade, but you do have 2 sixth round picks now and 2 seventh round picks by trading Logan Wilson to the Dallas Cowboys. All right, so what position group do you think the Bengals should target in the first round? Let me know what you guys think down at the pinned comment of today's video. No matter where the Bengals are picking in the first round, what position group do you think that they should target? All right, so coming up next on today's show, we are looking at Mel Kiper Jr.'s big board and kind of, picking and choosing, specific areas of need that the Bengals need going into next year. And I will say this, a reminder as well, most of these guys are probably going to be taken really in the top 2 rounds. Maybe some of these guys drift off into the 3rd round as well, but, it's highly unlikely that, a lot of these guys on Mel Kiper's big boards will, end up going that far. But, we have seen it happen before. So, if you're going to draft some of these guys that we talk about today, it's going to have to be in the top 2 rounds this year. So let's get into it right now, starting off on the defensive side of the ball first. First name here is Arvell, Reese, linebacker out of Ohio State. Now, at the top of today's show, I did say that, hey, I don't think, the Bengals might not necessarily go after a linebacker, very high up here in the draft. But, I've been talking to Tom, our draft guy here at Chat Sports, and he's saying, Arvell might end up playing some edge rusher, maybe outside linebacker when he gets to the National Football League. Right now, he's number 4 on Mel Kiper's big board, and, he's done a lot of really, really good things for this Ohio State defense. So maybe he's just another guy, another option that the Bengals could look at that linebacker spot and maybe even put him at that edge rusher spot. He's got a bunch of tackles for loss, a bunch of sacks so far this year. Sometimes they ask those edge rushers on this Bengals defense to, drop in coverage a little bit. I think, he's athletic enough to be able to do that as well. And you see right there, man, 30% pressure rate is out of this world. Arvell Reese very well could be a All-American coming out of Ohio State this year. I would not scoff at all if the Bengals ended up picking him in the 1st round. All right, the next player here, I think defensive tackle is another need for the Bengals here. And Peter Woods, while he hasn't necessarily had the greatest season this year, this kid's still really, really good. I think a lot of that just has to do with Clemson overall. Just isn't very good this year. Number 6 right now on Mel Kiper's big board. Before the season, there was some speculation, could he go number 1, number 2 overall in this draft. I think with the play this year has kind of slipped down a little bit there, but can definitely help you run stopping as well. And I do think, he could help you out a little bit pass rush too, there on the interior. I do like, TJ Slayton and BJ Hill, but right now, McKinley Jackson's just not really working out for you. And I do know that, Chris Jenkins Jr. has been playing a little bit more there too, but Peter Woods, is he a step up from McKinley Jackson? Right now, he's just constantly a healthy scratch, and then last week he wasn't, and still didn't end up playing in that game there. So defensive tackle might be another need for the Bengals. All right, my favorite player in this 2026 NFL draft is Caleb Downs. He's number 8 on Mel Kiper's big board, and I really think he's only number 8 because he is a safety, and a lot of times that's not really a premier position that a lot of teams want to go and draft a safety super high. But this kid, in my opinion, he is the top player in my opinion in this year's draft. He is smart. He is the quarterback of the defense. Some people are saying that this year he's kind of having a little bit of a down year. I kind of just disagree with that, type of statement there. You look at his numbers and say, yeah, he might be having a down year, but when it comes to what he's being asked to do in this Ohio State defense this year under Matt Patricia, it's just different this year. And, you got 3 other players on this Ohio State defense that could be All-Americans as well. A lot of guys are getting tackles and, doing a lot of really good things on that Ohio State defense. But Caleb Downs, man, he is very, very smart. Started 14 games at Alabama as a true freshman under Nick Saban. Was a freshman All-American that year as well. I would be ecstatic if the Bengals ended up picking him in this year's NFL draft. And considering that draft value at safety, there could be a real possibility that Caleb Downs could slip down all the way to wherever the Bengals end up picking in this year's draft. So who do you want the Bengals to draft in the 1st round this year? I know the past 2 years, there's been, some question marks with, the pick of Amarius Mims there and then the pick of Shamar Stewart. So let me know what you guys think. Who do you want the Bengals to pick in the 1st round of this coming year's NFL draft? All right, the next player here. I think you might also need some edge rusher help as well, considering, there's question marks on Trey Hendrickson, what's going to happen with Joseph Osai? Are they going to extend him? Cam Sample also going to be a free agent after this year as well. Rueben Bain Jr. is another guy who is just an absolute dog. He's number 9 right now on Mel Kiper's big board, and his freshman year at Miami was just really, really damn good. He had 12 and a half tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. Last year, kind of got banged up a little bit, but, this year he's doing some really good stuff as well. Speed to power is a big thing in Rueben Bain's game. He's just, he's not just running around, guys. He is running through offensive tackles right now. So, I would not be surprised if the Bengals, end up going that direction, especially if they don't, tag Trey Hendrickson and he goes off to free agency. Same thing with, Joseph Osai as well. All right, so I just kind of wanted to do an overview of what some of these corners are looking right now. Number 1 cornerback on Mel Kiper's big board is Jermod McCoy. Now, the big thing with him, he hasn't played yet this year. He got hurt in the college football playoffs last year and, just hasn't really been able to make his way back to that Tennessee defense. But, there's still a lot of buzz out there. I personally wouldn't want to go out there and draft a guy who hasn't played so far this year. Avion Terrell hasn't necessarily had the greatest year so far. I do like what Colton Hood has done. He's the other corner at Tennessee right now. One of my favorite ones, though, I think right now is Mansour Delane out of LSU. I think he might end up, as the season goes on. I know LSU ended up firing Brian Kelly, but Mansour Delane, man, this kid's a dog. He flies around the football field. He makes a lot of big hits, and he's really, really good in coverage as well. So he is definitely another guy that I would consider. All right, up next on today's show, we are going to flip over to the offensive side of the ball and look at some of those draft targets there. Offensive line, tight end are really going to be the main concerns there, I think, for the Bengals. So we'll talk about some offensive targets here in just a second. But first, we want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's show, that is Prize Picks. The hard-hitting football action is even better with Prize Picks, and the weather might be changing, but the feeling of being right never gets old. So keep the season rolling on Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Prize Picks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning that you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. You want passing yards, rush yards, and touchdowns, all from any, certain quarterbacks out there. Now you can pick all of them in the same lineup only on Prize Picks. And we've talked about a couple of Ohio State players here today, so I said, might as well, since the Bengals are off this week, might as well go with an Ohio State lineup here, going with running back Bo Jackson, more than rush yards plus receiving yards. I love when when Prize Picks puts those dual stat projections in there, rush yards plus receiving yards. Also going with Jeremiah Smith, more than just a half touchdown for him. Could be rushing, could be receiving. And then Ryan Brown also going with a half interception for him. I think he has 9 touchdowns this year to 7 interceptions. That one definitely could, end up happening there. One of my favorite things, by the way, about Prize Picks is, how you play is up to you. I personally love doing the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. But if you think you're solid with all of your Prize Picks selections, go for the biggest payout and go for the power play. No matter how you play, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test. So download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That link's down in the comment section and the description of today's video. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, over to the offensive side of the ball now here with these draft targets. Spencer Fano, offensive tackle out of Utah. He's number 12 right now on Mel Kiper's big board. He is the top offensive lineman regardless of position on his big board. Hasn't allowed a sack through 8 games so far this year and has only allowed 5 pressures. He's got a lot of experience, played over 2,000 snaps in 3 seasons at Utah, so he's got plenty of experience there, and, he would not be a project guy. He is a plug-and-play type of guy here. This is what Mel Kiper Jr. said about Spencer Fano. saying Fano started 12 games at left tackle in 2023 before moving to the right side in 2024, and he has started 20 games there over the past 2 seasons, working opposite another highly regarded bookend in Caleb Lomu. Fano does a great job of keeping his big frame between pass rusher and his quarterback. He is technically sound and shows, good punch to compensate for his lack of ideal arm length. So that if there's one downside there for Spencer Fano, it might end up being that arm length. The next guy here, another offensive tackle out of Miami, Francis Mauigoa. I'm glad I said that right. 16 overall in Mel Kiper's big board. He has also been a 3-year starter for Miami, and he has only played right tackle in college, 100% of his snaps at that right tackle spot, so that might be another issue. Can you put him over to that left side there if you end up going away from Orlando Brown Jr.? Run block grade, pass block grade from PFF, both of those are in the 80s right now, which is really, really good. He's another guy that I probably wouldn't, end up considering a, project type of guy. When you're that good on the right side, you're probably going to be that good on the left side as well. All right, flip over to the interior of the offensive line right now. Just kind of give you guys a grand scale here because there were no interior guys in Mel Kiper's top 25 of his big board there. One guy that I've heard about a lot, by the way, is Jake Slater out of Florida. There's just some question marks whether or not you're going to go, try to pick up a guard, pick up a center, what it is there. Parker Brailsford's another guy that might end up being one of the best centers in college football right now. He just missed out on Mel Kiper's big board here. So, there's, another 10 names at least right there that you could look for along the interior of the offensive line. So it might end up being mock draft season here sooner rather than later. So if you guys want us to start doing some Bengals mock drafts to help try to fix this team, drop a like on today's video. All right, the last guy here, offensive tackle Kadyn Proctor out of Alabama, comes in at number 25 on Mel Kiper's big board. He's kind of had some ups, kind of had some downs here this season. There were some rumblings early on in the season that he might end up going number 1 overall, but like I said, he's kind of had some ups, kind of had some downs, only given up 1 sack so far this year, run block grade, pass block grade in a pretty good spot. But, sometimes I think he just gets out over his heels a little bit, falls into pass rushers and, they put the swim move on him, whatever it is there. But, he's another guy that I don't necessarily think is going to end up being a, project type of guy. There is one different way that Kadyn Proctor could end up being a project type of guy, and Mike Renner from CBS Sports talks about it here, saying Proctor has shown some legitimate pass protection this year and is most likely going to kick inside at the next level. This is the first time, by the way, I've heard anybody actually mention that Kadyn Proctor could be a guard once he gets to the NFL here. He talked about once he gets to the next level outside a couple different schemes there. You're still getting the single best lineman at moving people against their will in the run game. That's one thing I think I can, confidently say is Kadyn Proctor is a very, very good run blocker. I think he's got a lot of maul to him. He likes, getting those pancake blocks there. The last position group on the offensive side of the ball we're going to look at here is tight end, because you do have a couple guys that, their future with the Bengals here is up in the air. One of my favorite guys, Max Claret out of Ohio State, when he was at Purdue last year, he was absolutely incredible. Ohio State doesn't necessarily use him a ton this year, but he can run block, he can pass block, and he can do some good things in the pass game as well. He really does remind me of a lot of these Bengals tight ends that they have right now. Another guy I think to keep an eye on, Miles Kitselman out of Tennessee. Kind of the same thing there as Max Claret. He does some good job run blocking as well, and a really big guy, and he can do some really good things catching the football and making some plays there. So a lot of names there, but we'll see what the Bengals end up doing in this 2026 NFL draft.